Hi, my name is Emily Young, and I'm a sex and love coach. And I'm so excited to share today with Conversations with Pearl.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the clouds, you're under 80. Funny how there ain't no rain or clear. Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Pearl, our podcast that's not only on podcast, but we're also on YouTube. And we are so excited to have you back today. And I'm excited to bring a very special guest on. We're going to have a lot of fun with this conversation. So, ladies, we're going to talk about some sex today. So be prepared. If you've got children in the room or the husband, you don't want to hear him, what we're going to talk about, send them out of the room right now. I'm giving you a few minutes to do that while I introduce our amazing guest. And her name is Emily Young. And after spending years working in the telecommunications, legislative, and legal industries, Emily transitioned to working one-on-one with other women who have also spent a lifetime building a career and raising children and have completely become disconnected from themselves. I can understand and appreciate that. She has been the woman that was so focused on taking care of everyone else. How often do you guys hear that here? That she completely forgot what her personal wants and desires were. I love that today Emily helps women to not only tap into those wants and desires, but she also helps them to work through any shame that comes up as a result of them. It is possible to live a full, pleasure-filled life on our terms without shame or guilt that society likes to push on us women. So, Emily, welcome. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. This is going to be so much fun.
It's going to be a blast. So take us back to that. You know, when you and I have been talking, we have so much that we align with the overwhelm and being a people pleaser and, oh, I got to take care of my family and all this stuff that, you know, I feel like our moms and grandmothers, that's what they only knew that to teach us. Right. And so now we're in a world where it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to be in the apron in the kitchen all the time. I can do that and have dreams and desires. Right. And so take us back what your life was like when you were like going, I'm getting out of this world. I'm getting to something different.
Um, it goes back a couple of years ago. I started having kids when I was really young. I was working full time young, and I put my focus into everyone else, not myself at all. I forgot who I was. And there was one day I was standing in a sporting goods store, and I needed new socks. And I'm looking at the whole display of socks, and I burst into tears because I couldn't remember what colors do I like? What patterns do I like? I felt so overwhelmed with having to make a decision for myself that I couldn't even pick out a pair of socks. And I knew in that moment, I was like, I can't do this. This isn't fair to me. I have to prioritize myself as well. So I started that day making little decisions. Anywhere I went, I would play a game with myself, this or that. So if I would see two people walking down the street, I'd look at their outfits. Okay, if I had to pick one, which one would I pick? This or that? If I had to pick a paint color, what would I pick? This or that? Just because I needed to start tapping back in to myself again and prioritizing what I wanted. And it took time. You know, when you become that disconnected from yourself, it does take time. But today, I'm a lot better with making decisions. It's like, oh, this is what I want. I know what I want. I've been able to tap back into my body, and you can feel it. You can feel it in your body when something feels right or wrong. So it all started with a pair of socks.
I love that that's like, I could just picture you too with the socks with going, oh my gosh, what do I want? Like all these choices.
Mhm.
Like even I can remember I didn't have that kind of moment, but I remember going somewhere one time going, oh my God, I didn't know we had these many choices. Like, when did that happen? I think I was getting an undergarment or something. I was going, when did that happen? You know, I was like, oh, I don't remember, like when that, like all of a sudden we had all these options, you know,
Right.
and, you know, and the problem is like, we get so focused. And I remember that, like, we didn't have kids till we were older because we tried for 10 years. And so I was in my mid 30s, I think, almost, when we were able to adopt Matthew. And I remember going, I want to be everything I can be for him, but I also still had to work, right? So I wasn't able to be a stay-at-home mom because the cost of all that was just outrageous. But I remember going, how do I make that work? And I just was like, I couldn't balance it. It was just like, you know, and so I would feel guilty because I was like, I've got to work late, or I would feel guilty because I wasn't at work, you know, and things like that. It was just that overwhelm. And, you know, that's why I love to call our moms who are at home working out of the, you know, that are running the house. I call them the CEO mom, because even as a mom who in our parents and our grandparents' stage stayed at home, you know, and had that, and they even today use that title, stay home mom. You don't stay home. You don't stay home and eat bonbons. You're doing laundry. You're paying bills. You're running a kitchen. You're getting kids. It's a chore just to get kids around to sports. That's a job in itself.
Yeah, I always joke that the reason I love my kids as much as I do is because I didn't stay at home with them, because I didn't have that gene. I didn't have that gene. I love my kids so much, but staying at home with them, that takes a special person and a special heart. And I wish I was that person, but I
know.
was not.
And that's why I love, and I really have to give credit to my sister-in-law, Melissa, because I went to go visit her and my brother one time, and she was having to stay home because she's had a health situation that's caused her not to be able to go to work. And my nephew, she's like, come on, Sean's got to put away his clothes. I'm like going, he's like 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, he's got to put away his clothes. I'm like, what's that about? Right. Because I'm like, I was still doing that when my kids were that young. And so we went upstairs and I'm like, so why? And she's like, because I have to run this house. These are things I can teach him young to do these things and understand that we all play a part in the house. It's not just mom does everything because mom is the one home all day, you know? And I was like, wow, that's so powerful. And that's where I came up. I'm like, you're the CEO of this house. She's like, that's right. You know, and I was like, that's so powerful. And, you know, and I want women, as I coach women, and I know you know, as you do as well, to understand that it's okay to run the household or work outside the home, whatever that is for you, or run a business, and also make time for yourself, right? And not feel guilty about that, because I think as women, would you agree that we put that guilt on us unfairly?
Oh, for sure. And sort of like you, but different. I was a teenager when I got pregnant, and everyone said, you're ruining your life. You're ruining this baby's life. You should just give her up for adoption. I was like, oh, no. And so because I felt like so many people were rooting against me, I threw my heart into making sure everything was taken care of for this child. I worked my butt off at work. I worked my butt off at home. It was all about her, because I wanted to make sure people didn't see me as a failure or think I was ruining her life. And so I did. I invested a lot of time into other people. And
well, I can't even imagine how heavy that is. I mean, I got married at 19. You know, I was young when I got married, but we didn't, you know, we'd start trying right away. But I can imagine that. And I'm sure there's some young girls that are listening to us right now going, I get that. I understand that, you know, make that choice that I'm going to keep my child. And, you know, and then to think about the naysayers and the people who want to, like you said, root against you, and to rise up that and be like, no, we're not going to be what you think we're going to be. You're not going to put that on me. I'm not accepting that. I'm going to be successful no matter what. I've got a different deck of cards, but I'm going to be successful. And so that pressure, I mean, what did you do? Like, where did you turn to for support when you felt those overwhelms?
at that time, I actually turned inward a lot, because I didn't have a lot of time for friends. A lot of family was there or not there. My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, at the time, he was probably my biggest support. Everyone said, y'all will never last. This won't work. And now we've been together 25 years. So,
I'm dying laughing. We have way too much in common. My Aunt Olga, God bless and rest her soul, she said to my husband and I, after we got married, we were married like, I think 10 years. I remember we were playing cards one time and she's like, I didn't think you and Chuck would last. I figured you guys would be done like years ago. Like, and to hear you say that, it's like, it's interesting how people, they want to read who we are without getting to know who we are. Like to
right.
understand the strength that we have and our, our desire to be more than what they think we are,
Mhm.
it's interesting.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it hasn't just been, roses.
No, it's not roses. I
Work.
agree.
Relationships are work.
Yeah.
And it's not like a TV show where just, everything's smooth and you love each other all the time. No, a long-term relationship is one of the hardest jobs you will do your entire life
For sure.
because you invest daily.
Right. Yeah. That's so true. So at one point did you say I've got to put a stop to all this crazy work that I'm doing and I really need to start looking inward of who I am and understanding that I have desires and wants and needs and I'm going to go after them. At one point did you say this is when I'm going to walk through that door?
After the sock story, it slowly started to evolve. And then last year, someone had mentioned to me about a sex and love coaching certification. And I knew right away, like before I read anything, I just knew that that was going to be my path. It felt so true in my soul in that moment. When I was younger, I wanted to be a sex therapist. I was pre-med in college. And then when I got pregnant, I switched my major over to psychology because I didn't think I'd be able to, make it through medical school with a baby. And I had a lot of pressure from home because I'm a church worker's child and we don't talk about sex. We don't think about sex. We don't, in that world.
It's like, what is that 3-letter word? It's
Yeah.
like, I was talking with a guest the other day and I said, yeah, when I got my period, my mother sat me down with a box of Kotex and the little pamphlet they gave you. And that's how I learned about my period.
Beautiful. But that's so common. I hear that from women all the time. The fact that you got that much education is actually more than a lot of women got when it came to even any type of sex ed. The most I got was, don't do it. Don't do it or you will go to hell. And that was my sex ed.
That's so true. Yeah.
And so I didn't go into sex therapy partially because of the pressure from them and then changing my major. So when I found out about the coaching certification, I was like, yes, I want to do this. And as I was going through the certification, we kept learning new and different things. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that this was in me all this time. There's so many things that if you did grow up in a religious or conservative background, you have desires, but then they're quickly followed up with shame.
Right.
Because you're like, nope, I shouldn't want that. And when you grow up in those environments, it's strictly, you have sex with your husband, you have missionary sex, you go about your business. That's all. That's basically the world that we're taught. And so to go into this whole other world where they teach you all these things, and it's like, oh, I want that. Wait, I shouldn't want that. And they taught us how, whenever we have any cases of shoulds or shouldn't, that's usually someone else speaking. It's
Right.
not us speaking.
Yeah.
That's someone else's voice coming out in us. And we need to stop and figure out, where is this coming from? Okay, where did I learn this? And do I want to continue believing this? Because just because you believe something right now doesn't mean you have to continue to believe it. You can choose to put it on the tray, hand it back to them, and say, thank you for this, but I don't need it anymore. I'm choosing something different.
Right. Gosh, that reminds me of, so our oldest, as I said, was adopted, and our youngest came through in vitro. And I remember we struggled so hard, and we only had 3 eggs, and they did a procedure called ICSI where they actually take the sperm and they inject it into the egg. And we're like, we can't afford it. They're like, no, we're not charging you for that. We believe in what we do here. And so fast forward, I think my youngest was probably in middle school around that time. And we were going to church. I never forget, we're at Christmas Mass, the Christmas Eve Mass. And I remember the priest saying something to my friend in front of me about how in vitro and infertility help is a sin. And I was like, I sat there and I was sitting there and I was like going, I like let that absorb with me. I didn't say nothing because, I just wasn't going to talk back to the priest about what he said. And I walked out and my girlfriend goes, did you hear that? I go, yeah, here's my deal. I believe that if God wanted us to be exposed to this, he would have not created these amazing doctors who help bring wonderful human beings in this world. So I don't believe any of that, but you're right. We get told these things and they get into our head and they get into our files in our brain. And so when we are in a situation, especially as you get older and, things change within your body, there's other ways to enjoy your sex life. And we go, like you were saying, I'm going, oh yeah, you're not supposed to do that. That's a sin. It's like going, okay, help me understand, like, where does that lie? And so how do you help your clients, like, come to terms with some of that? Because I know, and you lived it. I know I was exposed to it. I have many friends like, we were talking before we came on the air, but my friend has a pure romance business and she's like, I educate, but some people walk in those rooms and, she said there was a very religious group that was in there. They're so nervous about coming. But at the end, because she educated, they're like, oh, we understand it now. So how do you educate your clients on dealing with some of those emotions and those thoughts?
One of the things I like to remind people is that a lot of the things we're told by the church were created by man, not by God.
That's true.
And you have to realize that God says in the Bible, do not judge. And that doesn't mean don't judge. It does mean don't judge others, but it also means don't judge yourself.
Yeah.
So if a desire has been placed on your heart, it was probably placed there by God. So don't judge it, because then you are like doing exactly opposite of what he told you. If someone is told, oh, God put the desire to be a teacher on my heart, we don't question it.
So true.
God put the desire to marry this particular man. We don't question that. But if it comes to anything sexual, suddenly we question it. And that's because of beliefs of people within the church that have been passed on to us. It's not, God's not judging us,
right?
Because we have these desires. So I like to make that very clear to clients. And then we stop. And every time they have shame come up around something, I really encourage women to stop and figure out where it's coming from. Like, think back. And then when you realize where it came from, try to figure out why you were taught that message. Was someone just trying to keep you safe? Is it just because of what they were told? And then once you've determined that, do you want to continue to hold on to this belief? Because you can let it go. You don't have to hang on to it. I like to think of the beliefs we grew up with as a Jenga game. And we have this Jenga tower, and all of the beliefs we grew up with are in the Jenga tower. And once we get older and realize we can have our own beliefs, we slowly start to take beliefs out of the tower. And eventually, we pull enough of those old beliefs out, the tower crumbles, but there's still some at the base, at the core, that are still there that didn't fall. And those are the beliefs you've decided to hold on to that you still value. And from there, you can rebuild it with your own beliefs.
That's a great analogy to think about how we can, as we come into ourselves and as we understand that not everything, a lot of it is man-made or man-taught, that we can really understand that we have our own desires and beliefs. And it's like, what do we want? Like, what's our internal wants and needs and ours for our self-care? I love that analogy you put together about that. That is so visual. It's awesome. So let's talk about, so we have women that are listening. That's mostly our listeners, but we have some young girls, adults as well. But let's talk about, like, as we do get older and life changes and, and relationships change because, as women and men, our sexual, pleasure and sexual being able to have pleasure totally changes. I mean, our hormones change and we've done having babies and that whole transition of wonderfully aging younger happens. So tell me, like, what are you seeing and hearing in with the clients you're working with that is one of the top maybe 2 or 3 that you find people struggle with the most with those challenges?
One of the issues I see a lot is body image. A lot of people, our bodies change. I mean, after kids or as we age, our bodies change. And so many women struggle with just being naked in front of their partner, even being partially naked in front of their partner. So it does take work to build up that confidence again. And it takes sometimes frequently hearing it from their partner that they could be whatever size and they still find them desirable. They still love them. But there's work you have to do on yourself too, to build up your confidence. And that takes time. Part of the work you can do is mirror work, where you, look at yourself in the mirror and say nice things to yourself. And if the best thing you can say is, I like the color of my eyes, and just start there, then you start there. You have to take these little micro baby steps to build up that confidence, and remembering that even baby steps will get you to the finish line. So
that reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard Meghan Trainor. She just shared a few weeks ago, I saw an interview or discussion about how after she had the baby, I think she had a C-section. And so the whole body image, and she was working with a coach, and the coach says, you have to stand in front of the mirror naked. And every day you have to tell yourself something beautiful you see about yourself. And she's like, that first day was pure hell. She's like, I couldn't find anything. She goes, but by the end of the week, by day 7, I was finding things that I was beautiful about me. And so when you said that body image, I just thought about Meghan Trainor, like, going through that whole, and I've had a C-section, so I know what that felt like, and wow, it's so true. Body image, I can see it being the top one.
It's a big one. We change. And one thing I want women to remember is that's normal. Our bodies changing, that's normal. None of us don't change.
Right.
There's not a one of us that doesn't. So to be able to normalize it helps, knowing I'm not the only one whose body's changing. We're all changing. We're all evolving. So, but the mirror work helps.
Yeah. That's another reason why, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's another reason why when I do my pajama retreats, it's no makeup. Because, I remember my very first retreat that I did, we didn't do it overnight stay. You came and you had to show up with no makeup, and you could show up in your PJs if you wanted to. Now we stay overnight. But what I find is that we hide behind makeup so often that it becomes like protector. Like, I don't want to address how I feel inside or what's happening. And once I find when they arrive at the retreat, we take off the makeup in a really comfortable and safe environment, and we do a lot of fun around it, I find we open up more when we're around other women, because we're not hiding behind anything. There's nothing to hide behind now. Let's just be raw and open. And that's why I do the retreats that way. And I can tell you, my first retreat, there was one lady who refused to come without makeup. And
Mhm.
6 years ago, today, she's still at the same place in her life as she was 6 years ago. And
Mm.
it's like when we don't want to face or deal with what that internal, body image is or what's happening in our life, we're just going to stay stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, the people that are your people, they're going to love you no matter what.
Right.
With makeup, without makeup, if you gain a little weight, if you don't gain a little weight, if they are your people who are supposed to be in your life, they will love you no matter what. And if they don't love you, they're not your people.
Not your
You
people.
don't need them.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
friend Lisa calls them your balcony people. Who's on the
Mm.
balcony is going to support you and love you no matter what.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah, I love that.
Really beautiful.
So what would you say is the next thing that you see? What would you say is number 2?
Another big thing is women dealing with lack of sex drive. And it can be a number of things. Sometimes it is hormonal. And for some women, depending on their age, hormone replacement therapy can help. Or if it's a side effect to a medication, there are things your doctor can do. But for most women, it's not as much hormones or medication. If they're in a long-term relationship, for a lot of them, they're bored. They've been doing the same thing and nothing's changed. And it's like if you eat the same meal every day, it may be delicious the first few times, but after a couple months, you're going to be like, you may not even want to eat anymore because you're so tired of having the same meal over and over again. So that's when you introduce something new, try a new position, try a toy, try a change in location. It's sort of like when people go on vacation, suddenly they like desire their partner so much more.
So true.
That's two-pronged. Part of it is because you're in a new location, and part of it is because you go on vacation, your stress levels go down. And when your stress levels are high, your sex drive is going to go down because stress increases your cortisol. And when your cortisol is high, your body produces less of the sex hormones. And so you don't have that natural drive anymore.
Right.
Biologically, it makes sense because thousands of years ago, if we were in a super stressful environment, we're not going to want to bring a child into that environment. So biologically, when we're around stress, our body lowers our sex drive because it didn't want us to have a child that gets eaten by a woolly mammoth or something like that.
Right.
And so working on your stress levels helps for so many women to increase their sex drive.
That's I see that too. The clients I work with in life coaching, I see that's one of their big struggles. And I love to refer them to people like you because I'm like, that's not my jam. I'm not going to be able to really help you with that. I can help you with, self-care and, from exciting to boring, but some of the more in-depth relationships with those kind of things. That's why I love people like you that are great coaches to like really make them feel comfortable about that subject. I think it's so important. And, I find that even amongst my really good friends, like, it's like this taboo and so scared to talk about their sex life. Like they think, they assume that somebody else has got it better than them. When when you really sit down and have conversations, we're all on the same page. We're all working. It's just a different, each person's different in how they're dealing with it or what's happening at that time. But yeah, it's something we all do with it. And those are good top twos because I see those and and I think it's important that we have these conversations as well because, like I said, I give the example of what happened to me when I got my cycle. And it's like, we don't want our young girls to, it's sort of like when we start teaching our children about what's a good touch, not a bad touch, good touch. Well, it's the same thing we should teach about education, sex education, putting yourself, that it's okay to do these things. Cause I think, especially for me, I knew I grew up with my mom worked out of the home, but she was at home and she did everything. And yeah, my dad ran a business and he worked as well before he owned his own business, but he'd come home and sit and it's like, not do nothing. And, I'm very blessed. I've been married for almost 35 years and we share everything. It's like whatever, it's not like one loves to do a different chore better because that's what we like to do. And that's okay. But, we come to those agreements together. And I don't think I think we do a disservice when we don't talk to our children, our young adults, our men and our boys and
Mhm.
girls, because I think it's important for them to understand that it's not a woman's job anymore.
Right.
It's a relationship, and how to have a better relationship and how to have conversations about the relationships. I mean, I raised two boys, and my oldest one would go and do mani-pedis together, because that's when I would find out what was happening in his life, including his
Yeah.
sex life. He'd be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm meeting this girl," and I'm like, "Okay, you need condoms," because I'm like, I'm going to accept the fact you're having sex, but let me have you have some condoms on hand,
Yeah.
and things like that. We used to call them jackets, so my mother wouldn't get freaked out. Like, Mom, can you give me some money for some jackets? And my mom would just look, "Oh, jackets? What's that?" I'm like, "You don't want to know, Mom."
Oh no.
you know, but
Well,
I think it's important for having those conversations.
it is. And one of the things I've been preaching a lot lately to women is that your pleasure matters. And for so many years, the focus is on, okay, men always orgasm, women sometimes orgasm. And your pleasure matters too.
Right.
And if you're not getting the pleasure you desire, that's up to you to learn to speak up too, because you can't just depend on a guy to know what to do.
Right.
Just because they can orgasm easily doesn't mean they know what to do for you. And so for women, they have to take their pleasure into their own hands as well and speak up and be comfortable enough to say, I like this. I don't like this. Oh, try this. And you have to learn to get to know your body as well, which is why I encourage women to also develop self-pleasure rituals.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, that's so true. It's because you're right. They don't know, and you got to learn on our own, and those kind of things. So it's so true. Yeah.
Right.
This has been fun. I love these conversations, and it's so powerful that we understand that, like you said, we have to take control of it, whether you're male or female. Take control of your sex life, take control of your desires, take control of what you want in life in general, and not let other people steal that thunder from you,
Right.
and to speak up. So what would you say, what's something that you personally enjoy doing for self-care? Because, I have a Shira League, and we talk to the women all the time about how to find joy in life, how to have conversations like we've been talking about today with our partner about our sexual desires. But we also need to take care and do some things for ourselves. So what would you say, what's your favorite thing to do for yourself for self-care?
One of my favorite things, actually, I started doing during the pandemic. Instead of taking showers, I take baths now. And I don't take them at night. I take them in the morning. I found during the pandemic, I was still working for a law firm, at home, but, it was a very stressful job, and my cortisol was like up here all the time. And I found that by starting the day taking a bubble bath, it lowered my cortisol to start the day so that it didn't spike as much. And I stayed so much calmer and was able to handle stuff so much better throughout the day. So that's one of my big things. I take baths almost every morning, and it's just the way I like to start my day. I know that moms with the little bitty kids, that's not going to work for them, but
Yeah, but they can take them to school and come home and take a bath,
yes.
take those time, a few minutes for themselves.
Or if they have to do it in the evening when the kids are in bed, do that. But I found that helps so much. And another thing that I do daily, I love to dance, and I will put on a song and just do a quick dance break. And sometimes it's fun, like dancing in the kitchen, sort of, pop music. Or other times it's like slower, sensual music. And I encourage a lot of women who deal with the body image issues or the low sex drive to put on a song once a day, like a slow, sort of sensual song, and dance slowly to it. All by yourself, no one's watching. And the slower, the better. The slower you move, the more sensual you feel.
Right.
And just move your body and appreciate your body and appreciate the way it moves and your curves. And there's something so powerful about the endorphins that dancing provides and the confidence it provides. So those are baths and dancing. Those are my
I
my
love
top
that.
two
That's
faves.
so cool. Bats and dancing. That's so much fun. This has been a blast, and we're going to have you come back again, and we'll have to do a radio show recording. So those that are listening, we also have a radio show on 360 Radio for Women, and that's called the Self-Care Shiro, where we
Yeah.
delve in really deep and we get very personal on some of the self-care. So we are so excited you took some time out of your day, Emily, and you've been so patient. We've been trying to get Emily on, and I got COVID, and all kinds of life things happen. So I'm so glad we finally were able to have you on. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
I am on Instagram at Emily _Young, YOUNG _co. Co as in coaching. My website is almost about to launch. It will be emilyyoungcoaching.com. Hopefully by the end of the year, that'll be up and running too.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's always fun to birth something new. All right.
Yeah.
So now Emily knows, I forewarned her that we do these cards, our Better Questions, Better Life cards. So we're going to shuffle them, Emily, and you're going to tell me when to stop, and then we're going to read the card for you. So here we go.
Great stuff.
Okay. So let's see what your card says. How do I want to be remembered?
Oh, I want to be remembered as someone who teaches women to speak up for themselves, to no longer live in shame, and to feel really comfortable in their bodies. So I have a daughter and a sort of daughter-in-law, and I want them to not have to deal with the stigma that we grew up with, and not deal with the pressure to take care of everyone and everything all the time. I want women to step into their pleasure, and I hope I'm remembered by teaching them that.
Yes, that's so powerful. Fill their cup up first and find their pleasure first. So I think that's so powerful. It's a great way to be remembered. And I'm so excited you were joining us today. And I know we're going to have you come in as a guest speaker soon too on our Shiro League. And just so everybody who's listening, we have our Shiro League meets every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. You can show up in your PJs. Emily, we do a little dance party there to get the night started. So we love to dance, get everybody moving. It's a great way to end your week and a great way to start your week. It's completely on Zoom. We're not recorded, so we can be raw with everybody and be intentional with why we're there. So if you want more information on checking it out, just email me at pearl@wsliving.com and we get you all that information. And if you want to check and see where you are at on your own self-care, are you being a people pleaser? You can go to pearlsurvey.com. That's pearlsurvey.com and see where you score in your self-care. And you might be surprised where you score. So we're so excited Emily was with us today. And before we leave, I just want to remind everybody that we come into this world as this oyster, a little rough on the outside, but as we open up that oyster, we find our inner pearly greatness. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.